Hi, I'm Helen Robinson with So Kind of Wonderful. Welcome. Today we're going to be working on the Urban Runner pattern, which is included with the purchase of the Quick Curve ruler. So when you purchase the Quick Curve ruler, it actually comes with an insert. And on this insert is a pattern. It's called Urban Runner, and it's down here and on the back side. And this is a quick little runner pattern. The runner is made using the same basic block. And this is a great way to become familiar with the So Kind of Wonderful curve cutting, curve piecing, and square up techniques that we use in all of our patterns. So let's get started building the Urban Runner block. So here's your pattern that comes when you purchase the Quick Curve ruler. And all of our patterns, we have the graphic of where the ruler is on the fabric. We try to print in color, try to give you lots of information, and I will walk you through making this basic unit, which is the Urban Runner block. So the first thing the pattern tells you is to start with 8.5 inch width of fabric. So this is 8.5 inches wide. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the selvage end off. And what I'm doing is I'm positioning this fabric between these dashed lines on the ruler. So dashed lines on the ruler are here and here. And I purposely turned my cutting mat over so that we didn't have all the other lines on the mat that we were competing with, because I wanted you to focus on the ruler. So center fabric between dash line and dash line. And for here, I just put the selvage on the 3-inch line. I'm just going to now use a regular rotary cutter, cut in your curve cutout slot, and this is discard. Now we just move the ruler on the fabric. First thing we check is center the fabric between dashed lines, and then the curve we just cut is lined up with the dashed curve on the ruler. Now use your rotary cutter, cut in your curve cutout slot, and that's the center to our little block that you can see here. And if you're doing this at home, you're just going to keep cutting down this strip of fabric. So let's go ahead and get those side pieces, because we also have these side pieces we need to get. So this is a 3.5 by 8.5, which your pattern tells you to cut. And the first thing we're going to do, again, center between dash lines. This centers your fabric on this curve so that we don't have a wonky curve. And then the other thing the pattern tells you is put the edge of the fabric on the edge of ruler. Now use your rotary cutter, cut in your curve cutout. This gives you two different shapes. We're going to use these two shapes to build our unit. And now all we're going to do is sew these curved seams, and then we'll square up our block. Now, the first thing we're going to do is talk about setting this up so that when you're sewing, we're going to put, this is the seam we're going to sew. We're going to put the concave on the bottom and the convex on top. So this is the first step. And you can see I have a little 1/4 inch tail right here. And as I sew, I'm going to hold the fabric one piece in each hand as it feeds under the presser foot. So there I have my little tail. I sew 2 or 3 anchor stitches, and then I hold the fabric one piece in each hand. And I'm watching right here as it feeds under the presser foot, just bringing those curved edges together. So you can see how nicely that's sewed. So here we're going to add this piece. Concave on the bottom, convex on top. Flip this over. We're going to leave our little 1/4 inch tail. Anchor stitches and then hold the fabric one piece in each hand. And when I get down here, rather than pull, I'm going to move the fabric from the back side. Here you can see how nicely this sewed. I don't have any puckers. And what's great is even though my ends, your ends are always going to be off a little when you work with bias, but that's why we square up our blocks. So I'm going to press. So I'm going to press my seam toward my focus fabric. Press on the back, press on the front, use a little steam. So now all we need to do is square up our block. We're going to square it to a 4 by 8. And I'm going to put some marks on my ruler so that you can see what I'm looking at when I square up. I'm going to use, I think this one. So there is a dashed line right here, or there's a 1/4 inch mark on your ruler. On this top edge here, I'm going to go in 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to put a little dot on my ruler. And then I'm looking down here at the 8-inch mark. And I go in 1/4 and I'm putting a dot. So now I'm going to put this dot and this dot on my curved seam, here and here. So I have some of the block extending above. My dot is on that curved seam, and then look down here, and I've got the dot on this curved seam. And then check here. If you move one side, check the other. Notice I have plenty of fabric to get my 4 by 8 block. Now I'm going to trim 2 sides. Now rotate your block, reposition your ruler. This time I just want you to look at your trimmed edges. Put your trimmed edges on your 4 and your 8, and then whatever is left you're going to cut off. And here's the one we made before, and you can see how nicely those are going to sew together. I'm going to sew those, and we're going to talk about one more thing on your pattern that the pattern does point out. So this is just going to be a straight seam. I'm just putting them together, sew a straight seam. All right, here are my 2 pieces sewn together. I did press this seam open on the back, and what I want you to notice is that even though we trimmed to 1/4 inch, when you sew this together, here those curved seams match perfectly here and here. But on your next step, when you sew 1/4 inch here, it's actually going to come in 1/4, so you'll have a little gap there. It's supposed to be there. The technique for this isn't getting perfect points. The technique is sewing curved seams. So we wanted you worrying about this and not here. On some patterns you do want perfect points. We talk about that. We tell you how to get that. But I wanted you to notice that, so on your next step when you sew this to your other block, you will have a little gap there. And here is our block. Let me show you this one. You can see here's our little gap. Here's our binding, and that's exactly how it should be. I hope you enjoyed this today, learning about the urban runner block, and always remember that sewing is a creative process and it should be fun and enjoyable.